Okay, I think we should get started now, 11:02, I think. So we're 2 minutes late. Thanks all for joining. It's a good room. Today we're going to have this session. It's going to be mostly about education and identity, and we're going to have we have some brilliant mind here. So we're going to do a panel a little later. So David Wild from NREN is here, and he accepted to join the panel and have this Asia Pacific or the Australian at least view on it. We have James from Internet 2. So we also have the other side of the water perspective on it. And Alexander will also join the panel, and he's from SURF. So yeah, we will have hopefully some good discussions, and hopefully feel free to ask any questions along the way, because we want this to be like an interactive interaction if we can. So if you have anything, just feel free to, and they will answer anything, I know that. I will start off with giving a short presentation. My name is Eric. I work for NREN. My CISO is sitting right there, so I have to behave on this session. And I will give a short overview of what we do. Actually, I'm going to combine it a little bit. So we're doing some stuff at NREN, but I'm also going to talk a little bit because I work also a lot with eduGAIN, the organization in Europe, and how we see the things there. So as you all know, eduGAIN organization, as a short overview, does some network. You all seen. There are a lot of services where education and community is some of the, and identity services are one of the strong things. Then there's the community part, where there's the eduGAIN community program, which I'm also part of, which I think is one of the very important things that we are running together in Europe. And that community program is actually open to global participation. So most of the 16 task forces are actually open to global participation. And then, of course, there's the projects that are running under eduGAIN, which are funded by the EU Commission. NREN, we look a little bit the same. So we, more or less, we're just the 5 Nordic countries, and we're like this REN or for the Nordics. So we do a lot of services. I've been a lot in the past involved in all the media services that we're running, focused on education. But we do like the network, of course, is our core basis. And then we have all the initiatives that we're doing, where Walter, I don't know, you've probably heard about him talk about Polar Connect. It's one of the initiatives we're doing, but we also do other initiatives with European collaborators. Yeah, we look a little bit like a mini eduGAIN. As I said, my heart goes to this community program. That's where I think the strength in our community, or all of us, lies. And that's where we can change the landscape of education also, I think, if we can figure a way to, or a path to collaborate with. Some of the things that the eduGAIN community program or has spun out, some of the successes are eduRoam. We have, of course, the community program that I'm part of is one of the things that come out of this collaboration. Actually, I think, Walter, you were the one that set it up when it was called Terina, right? Yeah. So it's something that happened, how old is it, 10 years, 15 years? 15 years ago, this collaboration we have with all these 6 and task forces that we're doing. File Center came out of that. I think there's a lot of things that you actually know that came out of that program. And there will be also in the future. I think we just accepted a quantum SIG now. Is the next one that is going to pop up on the SIG task force for quantum computing. Is the latest one on the thing. One of the task forces is called Task Force Education, and that's kind of why we're here. In this Task Force Education, we've done a survey since 2019. We're going to do it again, so I'm actually going to send out a mail later asking all of you guys also to participate in that survey. But we're trying to identify some key points and some places where we might find things to collaborate on. And these are some of the things that we found. So video conferencing, learning environments, digital learning environments, trust and identity, online blending courses, how to manage content. And I saw a presentation or a keynote yesterday for that MU signing. It was really interesting because they've done a lot of things here. Student management systems, digital assessment, AI, of course, is kind of popping up lately. LMS system, learning analytics, open badges or micro-credentials or whatever they're called around the thing is a big thing. And then there's becoming a focus last year or last survey on tools that we run within the NREN. So not always in the cloud. That's something that we see a change we saw on the last survey. And this is what the survey looked like. This is very small. Pinned out the NRENs, what are they doing, what service are they running, and how do they provide services. And actually also some of the NRENs in Europe are providing educational support. So they do training of teachers to help with these online tools. So back to some of the achievements that we have done. I think eduGAIN is, everybody knows that, it's the biggest one. There's a lot of people using it, this service, all over the world these days. And I'm super happy because one of my thing was to take this Wi-Fi out of the network people guys and say, because I think this is a more student focus. So it's actually, for me, Wi-Fi looks like an educational service, not like a network service. I think we should treat it that way, but that's just me. Another thing is, of course, eduGAIN. Is also rapidly being spread out, and this trust and identity community, and you probably also attended some of the sessions around here, are really, really strong, and I think they're doing a lot of great work. One of the things that we're talking a lot about these days are student mobility, and the EU Commission created something called University Alliances. So there are 65 university alliances. Is that true, actually? Or maybe that number has increased. It's increasing all the time, whatever. There's a lot of university alliances. It's 8 or 10 institutions in an alliance, and they're trying to solve this mobility issue, each of these alliances, and working together. It's a great initiative. There's a lot of things coming out of this. Also the Erasmus Plus program that you know about is also something that the alliances are working a lot with. So that's good. And again, the credentials are something, digital wallets, it's something that are passed on by EU law. So we have to, all our governments have to by sometime 26, I think. Is that, am I right? That we all have to have a digital wallet, micro-credential based, or at least it should be offered by our government to the population in Europe. So that's why there's been a lot of drive on this digital wallets and micro-credentials. And there's a lot of projects. One of them is a DC4EU program that actually we have one of our colleagues, I think Stefan, is running this program. Yeah. That was what I was gonna briefly, shortly, European overview with. Any questions for that? Then I would like to invite you guys to the floor. Now you can see people, right? So I think that's actually a good thing. They can see us. So, as I said, this is the beautiful panel that we, I would need to find my notes. So, I don't know, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit? Would that be a good thing? I think so. So people can get to know you, if they don't know you already.
Sure. Hi everyone, David Wild, CTO at ARNet, Australia's academic and research network. So we connect all the Australian universities. There are 38 universities in Australia, and the CSIRO, which is our government research organisation. And over the last 20 years have also added several hundred K-12 schools and vocational colleges, and also what we call the GLAM sector, which is galleries, libraries, archives, museums. And they are very glam, all those people. And the reason that that is maybe important in this context is because teaching and learning happens across all of those, and researchers happen across all of those. So a student at a K-12 school wants to have access to a library or the National Archive or so on. So that simply at a connectivity level, that connecting as many of these institutions is vital. But yeah, we'll talk more about it.
So they're also on eduroam?
Yep, all of those are on eduroam. ARNet is also the national roaming operator for Australia for eduroam. And so if you're an ARNet connected institution, then you get eduroam also. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Alexander van den Hill. I'm with SURF, and SURF is the Dutch NREN from the Netherlands. Yeah, we are these days a sort of a full stack NREN. We do much more than only networking. We also do trust and identity, of course, but supercomputing is there. But for the topic of today here, I think most important thing is that we run the NPulse project. And that's a project to facilitate national digital transformation in education. That's not just services, not just tools. It's really harmonizing and empowering education in the Netherlands to provide collaboration among them there.
Good morning. James Deaton. I'm the VP of Network Services and Research Engagement for Internet 2. Like colleagues up here, Internet 2 serves not just the connectivity, but a network of about 40 different regional education networks across the states. And through the outreach, we have a class of members that we call community anchor institutions, which is primarily K-12s, libraries, museums. And so there's a lot of education that happens through those RENs. But we're the national eduroam operator, and we have a program called eduroam supporting organizations, where we work with those RENs to help expand it into the K-12s and libraries and other locations. We also have, I said I'm also associated with research engagement. We have aspects of outreach in education and facilitation to use the research computing resources, setting up environments to help with those education models. In fact, internal to Internet 2, we have another program, I think it's Cloud Learning, I have to look at the acronym, Cloud Learning and Skills Sessions, which actually is an educational program directly delivered by Internet 2. So there's a whole mix of aspects that made me want to reach out when I saw this panel to say, hey, I'd like to get involved.
So you're actually one of those that actually run support for the research in the education space. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I have prepared some questions for you guys, and I hope you have looked them over, so you have some intelligence to. Oh, you also lost it. He did. Don't worry. Sorry, Dave. Adapting to the changes in the digital landscape. How are NREN evolving, and the services and the stuff around, and how do you see that from the Australian view?
Yeah, our experience of supporting education has really evolved over a long time. So in the early days, our primary aim was to make sure that the network enabled it, and so that really involved peering with as many of the teaching and learning providers. So Blackboard and Moodle and Desire to Learn. Some of these are maybe Australian, some of them are international, and so we just make sure that they're connected to our network, and that means that a school or a university gets fantastic performance. That's always been important in Australia, because if something's hosted in the United States or America, it's really slow performance. So trying to make sure that things are just connected to our network is vital. So that was the first piece. That's evolved over time as more and more providers are present in the cloud and they're everywhere. Probably the second thing for us was over 10 years ago partnering with Zoom, and I know NordNet did also, and we partnered with them. We'd run a lot of video conferencing stuff before that. We partnered with Zoom because it just worked really well, video conferencing, and we ran it on our own infrastructure for the same reason, so that a video call did not go to the United States and back again 4 times. But then 2020 hit, and suddenly Zoom became a teaching and learning tool in Melbourne, where I live. Everyone just got sent home instantly, and we got locked down for the next 2 years. I got to know the 5 kilometres around my house very well. But it meant that our Zoom platform suddenly scaled up massively. And it was a pretty tough couple of weeks, but the CIOs and the teaching and learning folk sort of said, if we hadn't been able to scale it up, then they wouldn't have been able to send all of their staff and students home. So that, I guess, is a second piece that we've seen. And then the final piece, I guess, is that we've just carried on, particularly with that Zoom journey. We've got a couple of people at ARNet who have been trying to build a community, I guess, because we're a small organisation. Teaching and learning is a huge and complex environment. We try to look for the ways that we can provide the biggest support with the most general tools. And so creating forums to try to engage with different people across the university and school sector that we don't normally see. Usually we talk to the CIO and the network manager. This has been us reaching out into teaching and learning to say, okay, how can the tools that we're providing, like Zoom, support you, and then take that back to Zoom, sometimes in conjunction with NordNet and others, to say, hey, Zoom, I know you built a tool which is great for video conferences. The universities are using it massively, and Zoom has been really responsive. And these days, it's more than just Zoom; it's Teams and so on as well. But that's kind of been the journey for us.
Exactly, it's a good point, because that's one of the strong things that we can do together. That's work together. Like even though we're a totally different part of the world, we had crazy video calls in that period, crazy times. We shifted having shitty times to have video calls on, but we actually we got through to, because we were big now, so we got through to Zoom and were able to influence them on the tools that are embedded in that tool. So that's a good collaboration. I think we should do more of that in the future. Alexander, what is your point?
Yeah, it starts a bit like ARNet, I think. So most of the NRENs come from networking. So we optimize connectivity for education and for research. That's also the reason why we built in the past direct peerings with Blackboard or something like that to facilitate that in the best possible way. Of course, we rolled out eduRoam as well, and all the trust and identity things there. We do a lot of cloud procurement for our institutes as well.
So you do all the procurement?
We facilitate the procurement for our members there, either in the JAIL projects or ourselves, and some they do themselves, of course. But I think that the most groundbreaking thing that we do specifically for education now is, again, that Impulse project that I was talking about. That's really about harmonizing education in the country, making sure that systems are interoperable. We developed an open education API to facilitate that. We're using that within the country, and we see more and more the university alliances that you were talking about in Europe popping up, where a university in Eindhoven, close to my hometown, works together with a university in Tallinn in Estonia and in Copenhagen, close to UERC. And that is really hard to do that cross-border, but we're trying to get that going, and that open education API might be the solution for that.
I'll just add that similar paths. I mean, 2020, really focused many of us on some of the things that we were procuring and scaling up. I think Internet 2 has a history prior to that of a program called Net Plus, and it's very community driven. It's a sponsored program where the universities that have critical cloud needs basically come together and they vet and go through a very community-driven process to keep abreast of the latest changes and latest needs, especially given our current president. It's going to be interesting to see what other digital landscape changes we have to deal with. But I will say one of the things that happened most recently was, there was accessibility concerns and opportunities, and so we were able to rally a subset of universities, move quickly, and bring on new cloud services that helped, add, accessibility issues or address accessibility issues for like Zoom content and, subtitling and all those aspects. And so it's great to have that great community, going back to what you were saying earlier, having that community, having them engaged regularly. Another component that falls into this, be able to address changes, especially policies rapidly, is a cloud scorecard that we've developed with the community to maintain and address how different cloud vendors address security concerns, accessibility concerns, and keep that updated and keep it available to the community.
One of the things that I actually seen that SURF has been doing that have been really, really helpful, I think, to actually the European or the community is that they have some lawyers that sit and do some DPAs with all this privacy stuff. And that have actually helped other NRENs, not only Dutch universities, but also universities around Europe to actually procure these cloud services because there was a DPA in place and they could more or less reuse whatever was done. And the work you did on translation, thank you, because we all piggybacked on that.
DPA is a privacy assessment for people.
Oh, sorry, yeah, GDPR. We have a thing called GDPR in Europe, which everybody, a little strange thing. Yeah, so actually there's a lot of things going on within our big communities, and there are we don't talk about it often enough, but we actually are kind of helping each other the way we are working. So I think that's great examples. Oh my God. So this is one of the heavy topics. I know that SURF is really involved in this innovation and standardization, and how do we make sure that we are actually having something that are standardized, and maybe also, we're talking privacy later, it's like earlier, that it could also facilitate, if we're using standards, we know how to get our data back or stuff like that. David?
You should hand it to Alexander.
We start with Alexander.
Thank you. Thank you. You're asking about the balance between standardization and innovation, right? Yeah, I believe that's why we are here. Yeah. That's why we're NRENs. To facilitate the high demands of research, of education, we always need to be ahead and innovative. And that's what we do within SURF, for example, with data from the Large Hadron Collider. We constantly looking on pushing more bits to that pipe. Another example that comes into my mind is eduGAIN. It was sort of invented in the Netherlands there. So a highly innovative way of working, but you have to make that into a standard to make that work within our association in the Netherlands. And now you see that it's everywhere globally. That's what you need to do, I think, as an association, working together, and then making your innovations into a standard.
So let me short comment, because SURF is actually working also in the educational space really, really hard on that. So they have a person in UNIS, which is all universities in, is it a global or is it a European?
I think it's UNIS, so it's Europe. Yeah.
It's Europe, yeah. Where all the universities meet up and talk about standardization. They have the chair is actually from SURF, from that organization, and they have a board member in the One EdTech consortium, which is a global consortium, which are also looking into standardization on the EdTech in the EdTech industry. So SURF is heavily involved in trying to make good changes for all of us.
Yeah, and we also developed a sort of inventory, I should say, with all kinds of information about what's going on in education. So those university alliances that I was talking about, who is using what, so it's really useful to get to know what we need to work on in that. Yeah.
We actually don't do any of that. The reason why I think that might be interesting is we try to provide a forum or a platform for our members and customers to do that. So we're not experts in teaching and learning. Those experts are spread all around the sector. If there's a way that we can assist, it's by helping to facilitate places for those people to come together. So that might be an ongoing series of lunch and learn sessions that we run, and we just get the experts to talk at, or an ongoing chat forum that we create and facilitate, and that provides a place for the people who know what they're doing to talk about this. So ARNet, very much tries to provide tooling, and maybe this is a function of our funding model as well. Like, we're supported entirely by the members paying for services, and so we're just very much driven by them, I suppose, and we just don't get into that sort of standardization. We leave that to the universities and schools to do. So just a different perspective, I guess, on the same problem.
Yeah, I can actually say that I worked with Internet 2 long time ago, more than 15 years ago, on standardization for video conferencing, H323. Oh. Yeah. And Mike LaHaye. Yeah. But up to you now.
Oh, goodness. Wow, you sent me back to H.323 and when it was ratified. Yeah, I was a member of the community when that happened. But yes, there was a lot of dependence because, I mean, sorry, it's very little relevance today because, we're on Zoom, but back then, I think everyone was looking towards what was happening with, through Internet 2 and internationally.
I do think it has relevance because it showed how we work together, actually globally.
Globally,
and with vendors.
Yeah, and that was very key. When 323 got ratified, it had such a big impact because just in my, I'm thinking 2 careers before, I was a CTO in a state network, and we had a Grass Valley. That's a vendor name, but we referred to it. That was a motion JPEG system that occupied all this spectrum, wireless spectrum, and the moment that was ratified, it changed the entire profile of learning online because it freed up so much space. So, wow, you sent me back in time. That was a big one. But I think trust and identity is probably where that balance is most important, at least for the education space. And I think leaning on things that you were just showing on your slide deck, I think between InCommon, and its federation with eduGAIN and the activities that are associated with getting the vendors lifted in that space so that we can address opportunities for multiple institutions to come together. I think it's easy to want to see some of the innovations happening on the MFA side, for instance, but then you don't want to start segmenting the participants in the federation because of trying to embrace things. So I think that attention has been bewildering to me, and I wish my colleague Kevin Maroney, who leads that initiative, was here to talk on this topic. But wow, you sent me back.
Yeah, and it was actually good you said this because the next question is about trust and identity and trust and identity management. So, who wants to go first? Okay, I need my glasses then. Addressing the challenges in trust and identity management. Okay, you go first.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
No, I can speak on this one a little bit because I was pretty excited when, at least from the Internet 2 perspective, we developed and launched a program called the InCommon Catalyst Program, which recognized that we weren't the best at being able to scale up and handle some of the complexities of implementing these solutions. And so a few years ago, again, I don't know all the details, there was a whole process, a framework to be able to identify best-of-breed partners in the community that can be deeply engaged with these institutions. And just having that created a kind of a showcase where we've seen, I saw, let me give a little bit, I've only been with Internet 2 about 2 years now, and so I saw this specifically because I was helping small institutions, and so I was able to connect them with partners who'd been vetted, who'd been sourced, that could lift people to implement entire IDPs and be able to federate and in a very short time frame. And so I think that's probably one of the best things that I've seen, at least within the US, was establishing that program, because there's so many complexities.
Yeah, I'm sitting here, but I'm absolutely not the expert and trusted entity here. So lots of people are at home sleeping, so I cannot. But this is my try to get the. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah, it's also my try to get the audience a bit more involved. And Maarten is in the room there, so maybe Maarten can step up on that. Yeah.
If it's on, yeah. So I'll take it out. Otherwise, I'm going to have to stand so. So hi, I'm Maarten. I'm a co-worker of Alexander. I work in the Trusted Entity Department of SURF in the Netherlands, and also on the GEAN project, which is the Pan-European European network. In the project, I'm the work package manager or the program manager for the global eduROAM and eduGAIN service. Challenges on TNI. I see several challenges, but also definitely several opportunities we can get. Challenge we see now is the fact that many universities, at least in the Netherlands, are heading into more a big cloud Microsoft way, and especially the interoperability to what I would say, enterprise approach from Microsoft does not always have the same values and the value we have in our community, because we want to collaborate outside of outside of course with different researchers, or in this case different universities. So that makes it something a challenge, because you can be part of the federation, of the Microsoft Federation, but if you want to interoperate with other federations like ours in an open way, that's going to be challenging, and people are getting more in the vacuum of these kinds of big clouds. On the other hand, I also see opportunities by means that we have eduGAIN, which works, which we want to step up as a global TNI infrastructure, but also we have, for instance, in Europe, but also in other parts of the world, you see all kinds of additional outlets, proxies. It was already shortly mentioned in the introduction, like MyAcademicID, which is being used now within the EU to get out the students that do the Erasmus program. So if you do a half year abroad, and with our TNI services, we support that in that many things happening around the digital of the European universities, which are going very well. And I see especially now for the use case of the education, which we hear with, for instance, the European universities working together, TNI and the services we already offer as NRENs, and both in Europe and worldwide, we can really leverage that, I think. So it would be a good moment for us to step up and support further even more these collaborations, and especially also with the work that Evelyn is doing, amongst others, and we within the TNI parts of Europe and outside. I think we also get a good way on going further and really enable those collaborations in a digital way.
Now we got you up. Up and standing, right, and the microphone there. Do you foresee any challenges with these micro-credential things that are going to hit now, and student mobility that we're mentioning? Or is it just working?
Oh no, I think the technical stuff for micro-credentials still have to be worked out, but I think that is solvable. What you see more is the semantics always. What does it mean? I mean, if I have a unit within, for instance, the Netherlands, ECTS, is that perceived the same as in another university? So I see the problems more, both for TNI, both for education, on what does stuff mean, and do we really trust each other? That's sometimes also an issue. I mean, we have technical trust, we have some policy trust. We still have to have some contracts in place, if only for GDPR reasons. So there's, I mean, the further you get away from what's close to you, that gives an issue. So for micro-credentials, as said, I think the technical stuff, well, it's solvable. I mean, that's I think the easy part. It's policy and semantics that is the more hard stuff, because even in the Netherlands you see already, like, oh, if I hand out a credential to a student, how did they do it? And yeah, there's a trust in that, what we would call also that warm, fuzzy feeling of trust, which is not always a 0 or a 1. That's a tough one to bridge, and you can put in all kind of trust mark, but that takes time.
Thank you, Maarten. We are going to share the beer that Eric owes me tonight.
I have a question for the panelists. I don't know which one would be best to answer, but you've presented early on that you've mapped throughout the global NREN in the Special Interest Group on Education, the different services in education that were provided. But has there been a list made of maybe the open source educational services that could be available, particularly in a context if an NREN doesn't provide education service at the moment, but is really keen? Is there a one-stop shop where they can see what others are really doing, not just a category, but specifically what they can not buy, but what they could reuse?
Yeah. So right now it's more it's a global survey, but most of the people who replied are in Europe. There are a mapping. It's not shown yet, but will provide it on the TFHU webpage. So there will be a placeholder for it.
Okay, can you hear? And I'm Kazunori Konishi of APAN JP. I'm a founder of APAN, and I worked for the network activities from using the UUCP protocol in the old days that is built in Unix systems. And I connected to UUNet in the United States. I connected, MC-BAX, Netherlands, mathematical university laboratories in Netherlands. And at that time, I changed the protocol from UUCP to TCP/IP. It's reasonable. It's based on Unix systems. Bill Joy invested, printed, TCP/IP protocol in 4.2 BSD systems. Okay, this is the old age. And my understanding, this community should be the challenger. When we established the TCP/IP network, REA, Netherlands, was founded by EU. There's an OSI protocol, based on OSI protocol. On the other hand, Giant Dante adopted TCP/IP protocol in London. And they are fighting together, okay? And finally, our community, TCP/IP protocol community won. Right now, we are winner. But in a sense, it's very dangerous for us to keep the position of winners because some person are protective. And that's why I'd like to know what the challenges for our community, okay? Challenges most important for us to keep the community, okay? Can you answer?
Biggest challenges, yeah, I think balancing out, for me is a challenge, balancing out what you as a community, talking about a wider community, then also included, also the university included, what we can leave to commercial parties and what we need to do as an association. How do we maintain the foundation for research and education with all the standards and the interoperability rules, and how do we leave room for commercial parties on top of that? So we can be very protective and do everything ourselves, but that's dangerous, I think. But we also want to be in control and have that foundation for RNE very, very, very strong and stable. So that's the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah, it's a great question.
No, but you actually you addressed some of it in your keynote yesterday, and you talked about these hyperscalers and these subsea cables, right? It's the same thing. We're battling something. We're also doing this on the educational service thing right now. We're battling some of these hyperscalers, and if we don't stand together as a community, and I say global community, it's not enough that we are in NorthernNet because we're 5 countries. Europe is even too small to fight these hyperscalers. So we need to join and unite together globally more than we have done until now, I think, to overcome these challenges that we are seeing.
Yeah, I think there are multiple layers to this. There's the network that we've done for 30 plus years, and there are innovations there. There's probably one of the biggest challenges is in providing security to all of this, and that applies to the education space as well as the network. And I think that's somewhere that we can really play. This is what I was talking about yesterday. There's an opportunity there because education is very specific to our domain, and it's and protecting research and education is actually really hard. I've got children who, every time I tried to lock them out of anything in the house, cybersecurity-wise, they would find their way around it, no problems at all. And universities are like that, right? So you put a student management system up there, and instantly you've got 10,000 students who are trying to break into it to change their marks. So there's, I think, an opportunity there for us as a global network to take that intersection of cybersecurity, where it applies to us, and the tooling that our institutions need, and become experts at that point there. And it's really hard to do. Like, that's picking the hardest part to address because nobody else wants to do it. I realize that's not specific to education, but I think it sits right in the middle of it anyway.
Oh, but it is.
Yeah.
It is education.
Yeah.
James, you want to say something? Or you want to pass because you don't know what tomorrow looks like? Oh, you can say something. We really want to work with you.
I think it's been covered fairly well, but obviously we're here about the support for education, but your examples got me thinking about some things that NRENs can do, and that's supporting innovative research in a way that we can adopt some of those practices and put them in practice. And so one of the things that I've been pretty passionate about lately is we call it the National Research Platform, and I know activities within the National Research Platform has been adopted by other nations. There's a global research platform activity. I just saw a report on some of the technologies that are being used in that concept. And so one of the things that Internet2 has done very recently is started contributing directly to the National Research Platform, helping support activities that are now being leveraged in part of a is anybody familiar with AI? Sorry, that joke's getting old. So we have, for instance, we have this activity called the National Artificial Intelligence Research Resource. It's a pilot. We'll see if it goes any further. You know, lots of things have changed, but they have a classroom environment that they're supporting. It's a mix of both commercial and vendor-provided solutions, but there's also resources that have been brought forth through the National Research Platform. And so we're able to contribute to that, see the innovation happen, and help encourage adoption of open technologies like Kubernetes to make sure that if those take off and they start being used in this national funded artificial intelligence research resource, then there's a natural path to have the innovation happen in the network and scale into the commercial cloud when it makes appropriate, when the time comes.
And that was a perfect transition into the next topic that's going to be on supporting higher education institutions beyond connectivity. I think some of us discussed yesterday about this, or earlier today. Some of our NRENs we build on running some services on top of network supporting education. Is there a future for that? And how are you going to see that? Because I know you're running one service at least, but you're not really running those big services. You're more facilitating. So how do you see that in the future? Is there a place for that for the NRENs?
We actually run lots of services. It's true. Not so much in learning management. I think looking to the future, and this maybe comes back to your question, is the teaching and learning, the same as any other activity of the universities and schools. The solutions are going to be a mixture of commercial providers and the NRENs and the universities themselves. I think our role is to be representing our members and our schools, because if we're not there kind of representing them, and this comes back to what you were saying about how we need to do it globally, so that, you know, it's Nordinet and all of us singing the same story, because if we don't, then the commercial providers are not necessarily there with the best interests in heart. Some of them absolutely are. You know, they're in it for the same reason that we are, and, you know, AARNet is kind of, as I've said before, kind of a commercial anyway. So, but at the same time, I think ensuring that the needs of the sector are being communicated to the AWSs, the Azures, all the others, to make sure, so things like trust and identity are being driven down, federations that we're comfortable with, rather than necessarily all just ending up on intra-ID because it kind of works most of the time. That could very easily happen. So I think it's our role in the future is just to be keeping an eye on, yeah, globally what is best for the sector and trying to represent that. Now, there's a fine line between us going out and saying what it should be, whilst the universities are behind us going, no, we don't agree with you actually. So, you know, a huge part of that is providing a voice to our members, I guess.
As NRENs, we often see ourselves as a sort of network providers, service providers, right? But when I really think of it, we're more an instrument to advance research and education in our countries. And when you look at that from that perspective, you have a sort of different angle there. So we are there to make those changes, make them facilitated. Networking, we do a lot, but it's a thing that we do to advance research and education. And that's also what we are doing all the way to the top with that open education API there. And when we look at that in an international scale, we have a bit of apples and oranges in the community. Some really stick to networking and a bit of trust and identity, and some are moving on with education support there. And I think it's a role for us also to inspire others to think of that. What is the responsibility they can take in their country? What role can they pick up in their country? And when we are a bit aligned, we can move ahead together on that.
People that know me know I'm a very big open source advocate, and having a very sustainable way to support education has always been something that I've spent time on even prior to my role with Internet 2. And so I'm very excited that Internet 2 has leveraged activities like the data carpentries and software carpentries. If you're not familiar with those, please go to carpentries.org. But using those types of concepts to help bring educational resources, part of our class program, the one I referred to during my introduction, leverages those ideas to help, build, specific directly provided, educational resources. But I think at the same time, the institutions are leaning heavily on learning management systems that need to be, commercially supported and scaled up. And so the Net Plus program has been fundamental in getting and aggregating the voices to influence the way that those services are delivered so that they adopt opportunities to be part of the federation. In fact, right now, one of our board of trustees is the chief academic officer for Instructure, for Canvas. And so I think keeping that tight alignment, having the community of institutions that are directly impacted by those things are things that we, serving a technology provider role, are uniquely suited to at a national level.
Actually, I might just grab that again, because I guess one of the important things you've talked about there, I think, is aggregating. So something that NRENs have always been great at is aggregating stuff. We aggregate the network. We aggregate people. It means the universities don't all have to recruit expensive internet routing engineers. They put them all into the NREN. And I think the opportunity there is in the teaching and learning space is the same thing. So if 20 universities are all using the same tool, then there's an opportunity. If we're, as NRENs, specializing in securing our environment, maybe we can do the security review and the supply chain kind of analysis on behalf of those 20 universities, rather than then having to do it 20 times. That, I think, is a good opportunity for us. It just goes across the board, though. I see a question. So the question there was, yesterday we had a GNAG meeting, Global Network Advancement Group, and we talked a fair bit about refocusing that. In fact, the GNAG is set itself a scope, and that is around the network largely, the network and securing the network. And it's kind of working on the premise that there are other collaborations and groups in the NREN space that look after teaching and learning. So I, with my hat on as a GNAG chair, no, we're not going to touch education for the moment. I'm going to let somebody else talk about where those kind of global collaborations happen on that front.
I'm Francis. My wife is with the library, and a lot of things about library, the publications and all those, and they spend millions of dollars getting the IEEE, e-book, e-journals, and the universities really pay a lot. And when we go and bargain with them, even as a national, in Singapore is very small, they don't care. I mean, I was so angry with IEEE because, hey, we are reviewing your papers and everything, and at the end of the day, you charge my organization a huge amount of money. It's millions. It's not your few hundred thousand. It's millions. And knowing that my researchers, all researchers need it. And I feel that there is a disconnect. And it's not only them, all the publishers are doing the same thing. And they force us, my university, to pay a huge amount of money for the e-journals and everything. I don't know how we can tackle them. At the national level, we have a group, librarians come together, bargain with them, you know, and it's still very, very difficult. And they're still taking people off one by one. You know, that's how they do it to optimize, and they're still doing that. I wonder whether we, as a community as a whole, can do anything.
I actually think it's a good question you have there, and I think there is something we can do, and we can definitely learn. So in Africa Connect, Laila, I'm looking at you right now, because there's a project going on right now where Ubuntu Alliance and Background have gone together about publishing paper and reviewing them, because they have a really big problem paying those fees that the publisher takes for publishing. And also, I actually know there's a 2-3 years ago, or just during COVID, EU Commission launched a portal where European researchers can get their papers reviewed and published.
Where I could chip in is that something was only announced 2 weeks ago as part of Africa Connect. We have managed to, so there's a platform called Research for Life, and for some countries only that are from the emerging world, you have access to a lot of the Elsevier, I think, publication and a lot of different publishing for free if you're from some countries, or at a lower price. And we've been talking to them for, I think, over 10 years now, and managed in the last 2 years to make our federation as a pilot function with their access. So it's only working in the UbuntuNet Alliance, but we see a lot of interest already from Ecuador, from Ghana, saying, hey, hold on, now it seems like it's working. I want to see how, with my federation, I can have access to these publications for free. Unfortunately, Singapore would not be qualified, but it could be interesting for emerging.
I'm not talking about Singapore.
No.
I'm actually talking about the Asia Connect project.
Exactly, but there's space for something, because there's already somebody who's done some work.
That's right.
That we can piggyback on.
I think we should.
Yeah.
And I'd love to have a sharing session with you later. Yeah.
And about the question about the global network architecture group, I'm looking at my own CEO right now and saying maybe it's a point that we can take up and making a global education architecture group. If there is a people enough that wants to support something like that, so we can talk about these strategies and where we sit in, and maybe work together on massaging some of the vendors in a direction we want to go. You want to say something, James?
Yeah, just briefly. Just kind of opening, maybe.
Are you sure?
I mean, on this particular topic, Francis and others, I have, a great deal of interest, and so I just want to make sure there's a level of caution. I think I think NRENs ought to be hyper aware of some of the organizations that are making great headways in this space, and help convene. I mean, we often have a great relationship with the people who have the institutional role for the infrastructure on the campuses, and so we have a great opportunity to help bring awareness. One of the things that makes me say this is I have been privileged to be participating in a group in the U.S. It's actually international, but it's kind of only a few international participants, but it's called the Campus Research Computing Consortium, and they actually had a funded workshop a few years ago to focus on the entire research and education ecosystem of things, whether it was the publication of papers and the access and many attributes, and it became a very complex picture. But there are folks in that community that are deeply devoted and making great headway. And I think I saw something on the agenda here at this program, maybe yesterday or the day before, about RDAP, and there's groups like that that are focused on that. And I think one of our roles is to have some people dedicated to being aware and engaging. And I think the community groups that GAIN runs and the community groups that we have within the U.S., I think keeping awareness there so we can quickly pivot and engage is a great opportunity.
Well, Alexander, he said we can't sit here for 1.5 hours, and 1.5 hours now gone, Alexander. So it's 12 o'clock, and now we are keeping people from their lunch. Should we keep on going, or should we stop now?
We have more questions.
we always have more questions, but I'm more concerned. Is there any questions from you guys? No, sorry. We are. No. It's me. Okay. Say something then. Just don't look at me that strange way. Okay. Oh, you've only been here for an hour. Sorry.
Well, maybe then to come back to that to that GNAG question that you guys had. With GNAG, we have clearly a common ground. We all do networking, so it's clear that we are on the same page, I think. With education, that's a little bit different. Some of us do, some of us don't. There's also other organizations around that do organization support for that, so student mobility, harmonization of student data. So that there's work to be done. So that's my warning. We don't really have that common ground yet. I would love to see it, of course, for our community, but we need to work on that.
No, 100% everything. But I just learned or just thought of a way that the GNAG ought to address an education issue, but it's inward facing, right? Many of the topics that GNAG has been dealing with, fundamentally it have a root of a knowledge difference in supporting routing policies, routing configurations. And so I would love to see NRENs collaborating on how to deal with this gap that I'm seeing in the U.S. It's become a very big issue. The people who know how to spell BGP are being adopted by industry, or they're retiring, and especially those that know how to spell BGP that care about the unique aspects of an RNA network are fading. And so we, within the GNAG, I think there's an opportunity for us to address education internally of those BGP, the people who spell BGP, and get them to the point that they're passionate about what an RNA does, the value of an RNA. And so I'm excited about having some more conversations there, because within resilience, there's opportunities, anyway, we'll talk.
It's funny when a bunch of network dudes start about education.
So now we've transitioned and we're talking about educating our own network engineers. Is that right? Oh, I like it.
You want to say something, or?
No, I think that's a great idea. It probably, all the folk involved in teaching and learning of students are probably thinking, come on, guys, just go and get some Cisco courses.
So, going a little bit back to what we discussed earlier, is there any way that we as NREN collaboratively can enhance the collaboration we have with the vendors and among ourselves? Because we often sit here and we talk and we talk and we talk, and we actually, now I'm using an Alexander phrase. Don't get the stuff done, Alexander. So I'm looking at you now. Do you have an answer, or do you have an idea that where we can change this in the educational space? And I'm thinking globally.
I'm also really happy to think globally, but things start small. Again, like EduRome started locally, started in Europe, and it grew over time. I know that we can do those things. EduRome, again, is a very simple example, but we can do those kind of things. So it starts with a smaller group, and in Europe we have a few NRENs now that are thinking of doing student mobility. That has to do with trusted identity, but I'm not so worried about that. We're thinking now of a use case is exchanging course information, so that when a student wants to go to a university abroad, that he can apply for a course abroad, that he can get his results or his diplomas back that are acknowledged by the rest of the institutes and the employers as well, of course. So these are the small steps that we can start doing really here together in a small group, and I really hope that grows like an oil spot, right? That others can join as soon as possible, and it grows like we did with EduRome. But then we're routing not IP packets, but student data. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very intrigued by some of the things you just said, especially what you had in for some of the activities happening within the EU. But I live right in the center part of the U.S., an area that's called the Great Plains, and there's actually a project. It's no longer called the Great Plains Interactive Distance Education Association IDEA, GPIDEA. It's now just IDEA, but it's a program where there's 24 different universities spread across the U.S. It's spread outside the Great Plains, but there was a situation where there's 4 different LMSs across those institutions, and the idea of IDEA is to give a student the ability to finish out an incredible degree program, but they have situations where students are having to keep track of, in some cases for one program, 7 different identities on 3 different LMSs. And so I'm excited because this is a case where Internet 2 is involved in pressuring, in some cases, the vendors to adopt new practices so they can be part of in common and be able to make it easier for the identities to be translated. And so these institutions, I'm very excited because it's not a program that I'm involved in, but I poked them and got them to go to Internet 2 back when I was in the community. And it's exciting to think that these conversations between the CIOs and the academic officers of these institutions are having an impact with the vendor, because now we're getting to a scale of institutions and seeing the impact and the opportunity, of course, for the vendors, short of having a national ID.
I think maybe something that Alexander said makes sense. Like, you start with the problem. You can't jump straight into global solutions. You start with a problem like what Francis gave as an example. In the case of research publishing, there's an actual problem. Start with that, and then when you've got a concrete problem to start with, then you can apply some people to it, and then the final piece of that puzzle is kind of the global communication to make sure that if a solution's found here, that it can then be kind of copied elsewhere. So it's not super complex. It's one of those things that's hard but simple. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, we worked on Zoom, like we work on H323 in the old days. We always find this common denominator, that's something that we can agree on. We actually had a discussion earlier where we talked a little bit about getting some people, or I would say that my CEO should get some people in the room, talk about some strategies so we can actually identify those places where we can work, and that might be that GN for whatever education thing that they could do something like that in. I think because we need to find those platforms where we can stand together so we can get stronger. And yeah, I've been traveling around, I've been talking a lot to a lot of people, and it's hard to identify where the common denominators are. So I do see a real challenge here on figuring out where we can proceed. There are some student mobility is a good example. Maybe the libraries could be a very, very good example, or the research papers. I just paid for my daughter's papers to be published because she couldn't afford it herself. So yeah, I know how expensive it is.
That example of the libraries also makes me think of another challenge we see in Europe. That's at least what CIOs came back to me. This university from Tallinn, from Copenhagen, and from Eindhoven that I mentioned, they are started to work together. And then a CIO comes to us, say, hey, how do I deal with software licenses? How do I deal with license for information system? I'm part of this bigger virtual university now, and I'm expected to offer them these software packages. Who's going to pay for that? We don't have an answer for that yet, but we need to work on that as well. So that's a different angle than only the student mobility, but something that universities will face.
Hello, my name is Asma. I am in charge of the institutional repository at the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology, OIST, here in Japan. And I'm a librarian. And yeah, just these last couple months, we've been negotiating our subscription contracts with Elsevier and Springer, and it's been a struggle because the prices are they're getting more expensive, I mean, every year. And we've heard about I think at least 3 universities in the UK, like University of Sheffield, I think University of York as well. They have cancelled their subscriptions with Elsevier, and I actually like that. It's a bold move. Because, for example, for us, we're a research institution. We really rely on, for example, on titles from Springer. We cannot really cancel that subscription for now. We don't have anything to replace that. But as a library and as an institution, we're trying to, go around our budget and try to keep everything within reasonable expenditure. It's really difficult. It's really, really difficult. So I've heard about something going on here in Japan. Hopefully it's going to happen. Like universities trying to get together, maybe create a consortium kind of thing so that we could put some pressure on publishers in the future to negotiate those prices, which are skyrocketing. So
I think that would be really a strong thing to do.
Yeah.
And when I think of how some of us do that in Europe, we just finished the Oker tender in Zeeland. That's about software services. It's a bit of the same thing, right? So we negotiated prices, but we also negotiated privacy standards for there, or interoperability standards. How do you deal with egress charges for there? It's very, very hard for an individual university to be strong there. But when you join forces, and we did it on a national level and on a European scale, you can be really strong. So I believe that the savings we made there are 10, 20 fold. So really good to get together and to do it jointly, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, because as Sir mentioned earlier, sometimes, I mean, there are some publishers to whom when you talk, you feel like they kind of have the best interest of the researchers in mind, but some feel really, you feel like you're talking to, I mean, it's purely business, right? You're just negotiating money. Exactly. And it just hurts. For a librarian, you want the best for your researchers, but sometimes you just can't. I just canceled a couple journals, and it really hurts. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, but I think it's a topic that's ongoing, and I know that because I also work in this Africa Connect project together with Laila sitting over there.
Just want to add.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I am Sanjeev Anjal from ARNET India. Answering to her question, actually recently in Government of India has taken a step called ONOS, One Nation, One Subscription. So for all the universities and colleges, one subscription has been taken by the Government of India. and it is now all the journals, research papers, etc. They are all accessible to all the universities and colleges in the country. So there was substantially reduction in the price per university or per college basis. So that can be one step which at the government level can be taken. Thank you.
So sorry, I guess the takeaway from it is basically we need to come together and work as a consortium to address or to face some of these issues together, and we would have a bigger voice together. I mean, some countries are very, very lucky, but maybe what could happen is that maybe we could collect these cases together. What's happening in India, what's happened in Africa Connect, and these are examples, and then we can show them, hey, you've given such a thing to them, can we do this similarly? And for everyone. Otherwise, I tell you, the vendors are very good. They know that the academics like me, if you cancel Nature's subscription, I'm going to jump at the librarians. I won't jump at them, I'll jump at the librarians, because they are supposed to be in charge of subscription. And I need my Nature journals for me to read, for my research. So if I don't have it, I'm going to be in a bit of a struggle trying to keep up with what's going on.
So you just found your next working group in Asia Connect. Francis, that's yours.
Sorry, that's my wife.
One comment there about an important aspect is being clear on what the role of the NRENs are in that case. And I say that because in Australia, there is a completely different organisation called CAUL, the Council of Australian University Librarians. They know what's going on far more than ANET does in this space. We could provide a role to make sure that CAUL is talking to a global effort to negotiate. But in that case, ANET as an NREN would just really be stepping out of the way. We're not going to add value to that. So that, when we get in, that's why I think the networking piece with things like G&AG is easy, because we're the experts in networking. We're totally fine in that space, but step into these areas which are adjacent, but still very critical. It gets more complex for an NREN to know, okay, what's my role here? What's my role not to do here? How do I set up the conditions and then get out of the way? So in short, I'm just saying it's complex, right?
Can I ask another question? I'm a little bit curious. I never checked with my wife about this, but I was just curious. According to my wife, they actually have a separate connection, commercial link out to gain access to the databases and everything, right? I'm just wondering, wouldn't it be great if we force Elsevier to connect to the NREN where they are at, and then the universities will save on their commercial internet traffic, and this will go through our NREN network, which is much faster, less congested, okay? It's something that I'm just throwing out. I'm not sure how that operates, but I think it would certainly benefit the libraries, the users as a whole, if they can get access to it.
And it's a good business case for the NREN.
It's good. Sorry, I'm from the NREN, so I can't say that outright. But I think it also makes sense for the vendor itself. So if they connect to this NREN network, okay, whichever country it is, if they connect to that and gain access through the NREN networks to large global research and education population, that will be.
One thing I can add here is that one of the reasons why that we in NortonNet had success with running these above the net services or educational services was we created a support structure where the vendor itself did not have any user support. So we took a big chunk of the normal cost when they deploy a service at a university away from that equation, and that's why we could make a business case out of it, because we had this structure where university went to NREN, NREN went to NorderNet, and NorderNet went to the vendor. So there was only like one point of contact for the support thing, and that could be something like that in this case too. That could be the argument for it. Yeah, you want to say something? Because I have a question. Oh, you want to say something? Okay.
Actually, no, I might be jumping in front of you. I wanted to hear from the audience, because I realize, you know, and you probably realize too, we've got 4 well-resourced NRENs sitting in front of the room. The global RNE network is more than that, and so I'm always keen to understand how we can lift up the global RNE network for all the NRENs that are connected to it. So I was just interested to throw out to the room. I know we've touched on you know, Africa Connect, and maybe you touched on Asia Connect, but I would love to know, what are the problems that are out there that maybe, you know, I don't see sitting in Australia because of just, you know, the way that we're organized. I realize that's a vague question, but just very keen to hear from the audience.
I can be a bit more precise, because I sort of have the feeling that we're moving to networking, but the title of this session is education. So not really, with all respect, library contracts or software contract, but what is that we can do to harmonize our student information, the courseware, student mobility, those kind of things, to stay a bit to the topic.
Yeah, so to me, the call to action to everybody here in the room would be that when I was first into the student mobility part, you really saw already on a university scale that the people from international relationship normally did their job with an Excel sheet, and now they had to do something. Their primary process is becoming digitized. I mean, IT is the business process is IT, and it's no longer like, oh, I can tackle that with the IT department. So especially here for people also in the NRENs who already have good connections with the people at universities, make sure, and that's also what we can facilitate, what we at least for SURF already do, and hopefully also in a GEAN scale, and hopefully you can do that here in APAN too. People are really depending on those courses, on those students. So make sure you reached out not only to the network people, but also make sure to reach out to people who do the education, who support education, because it's becoming more and more intertwined. I mean, it's no longer like, oh, I have a teacher here and there is a functional guy who's doing running the IT department. No, because it's fully intertwined nowadays. So make sure to reach out to those people at all places, especially which are the traditional ICT and education people, to reach out, what do I need? And especially in the cases here where we have the questions on, we want to collaborate, especially not only together, but also with other universities, reach out to them, make sure what they need. And I think, I know what David said, that not all NRENs are doing other stuff in SURF. We are, I think, in the lucky position we have a broad portfolio. But even as an NREN, you can make sure if there are already organizations in your country, make sure that they are connected to that. Because also looking at the case for the librarians, acting together makes it way more easy, at least better to get further. I mean, what the quote that was mentioned before was, alone you go faster, together you go further. Of course, you can go along, but then probably you're open to the all vendors who will happily sell you anything. But getting out of it is one, and making collaboration more easy is two. So make sure to reach out, get together, and see what you can do bottom up and support your universities. That would be my call to actions.
I love the shirt, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a. Oh, there's a question. Okay.
I mean, the question was more from an emerging country perspective. What I'm observing, because I've only been in the NREN ecosystem for 5-6 years now, is we need to kind of take a step back, and instead of looking at what we can offer to the end users, ask ourselves, what do they need? And particularly in education. And it's fine if an NREN feels like it's not my mandate to provide edtech. That's okay, because that's clear. But at least that we have a clear understanding of what is needed and where the gaps are. And sometimes I have a feeling there's a bit of a disconnect between those two things. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
True, true.
And do step up where you can, I think.
Let me add to that. E-book, e-resources is one of the things that the NREN in Asia Connect, when we did the NREN need analysis, came up for something that we should try and help them to tackle. Yeah.
I have to think of one of the guys at those university alliances. Again, mentioning the University of Eindhoven, close to my heart, close to my hometown. But there's a guy who is can perfectly articulate what he needs from us. He can also identify, hey, I see this need, but it's way too far. That mountain is so big, we're never going to solve that. So he can articulate his biggest needs that have achievable goals there. So to echo what Martin said, go talk to them and try to fix that.
Stand in that gap, or otherwise make sure you get into the organizations who do solve it, but leave not the user alone. That would be really also my call to action.
I actually think saying that and going around talking to the people and try to understand what the needs are, it's actually more complicated than you think. I was wondering. It was actually for all of us in the room. I had one question that I was thinking, because my CEO is sitting over there and he's looking at me and he say, "What impact do you create when you do what you do?" And do anyone have any metrics implemented that can show the impact of the above the net services or educational services that you're providing? I know we can show the Zoom stats, but it's kind of boring, right? But what impact does we actually make with this? Do we have anything we can do? I don't know. Do you know, or anybody? Yeah.
I have an input on this. I'm from. Hi, Trish. I'm from the Australian Research Data Commons, but my role is with the Research Data Alliance, and it's actually a really big topic, how to measure impact, and it's not just stats of uptake in subscriptions. So a few of the ARDC folk have started a working group. It's a global one through the Research Data Alliance, really looking at infrastructure, research infrastructure uptake and the different ways of measuring it. So, you know, we don't have solutions right now, and that's why we're creating this and looking for support worldwide, actually looking for co-chairs and input from outside of Australia, because we already know that's an issue in our region. So I don't have a solution, but I just wanted to put it out there that it is something very much in our radar, and we'd love participation in this. So RDA Foundation, look up the working group. It's just in the early stages, but I think there's a real opportunity to solve this. Yeah.
Very, very interesting, yeah.
Because it's really linked to funding. At the end of the day, you know, we need to show that there is impact and uptake in these services, and especially when we're doing pilots, you know, how do we really measure it? Different ways. Thank you.
Thank you.
No? James, no? You're good? I think we reached the time. If nobody else have anything to, no? Then thanks a lot for coming. Thanks a lot for you guys. I owe you a beer.